Tonight on Primetime, a breakthrough may be within reach in the Strait of Hormuz. Iran and Oman say they have agreed in principle on a new shipping route which could restore commercial traffic through one of the world's most strategically important waterways. But with Tehran warning Gulf states against supporting future US military action, is this really the beginning of de-escalation? Good evening, welcome to Primetime. I'm your host, Katie Wilson. Let's start tonight in the Middle East, where Iran and Oman say they have agreed in principle on a proposed shipping route through the Strait of Hormuz. The plan could pave the way for commercial traffic to resume through the vital energy corridor.
Iran says it's reached an agreement in principle with Oman on a proposed shipping route through the Strait of Hormuz. It marks a potential step toward restoring commercial traffic through one of the world's most important energy corridors. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Esmail Baghaei said Tehran and Muscat have agreed on the route's geographical coordinates and are finalizing a joint statement covering technical, legal, security and environmental aspects. A senior Iranian diplomat said the two sides reached preliminary agreement on nearly all key issues, including entry and exit routes, after more than 3 weeks of consultations. Under the proposal, the current temporary northern and southern shipping lanes would be replaced by a single route through Iran's territorial waters for 2 to 4 months, while talks continue on a long-term arrangement. Baghaei, however, said the agreement alone would not guarantee safe navigation, claiming that US military activity and the naval blockade of Iranian ports remain security concerns. The announcement follows weeks of Omani-led mediation, while US President Donald Trump says negotiations are making progress and that talks seem to be working out quite well. Tehran continues to deny direct talks with Washington, saying discussions are taking place only through Oman. Meanwhile, Tehran has warned Gulf states that any renewed US strikes could lead to retaliation against American assets and energy infrastructure across the region, urging countries, including Saudi Arabia and Qatar, to help prevent further escalation. The Strait of Hormuz carries around 1/5 of global oil and liquefied natural gas shipments, making its reopening crucial for international energy markets.
Well, the diplomatic push over Hormuz is widening. Iran and Italy have exchanged updates on negotiations over the strait. Tehran says whilst an agreement with Oman is close, the waterway will not reopen immediately. Taras Sharavilu reports the latest from Tehran.
Iran and Italy have briefed each other about the latest negotiations between Tehran and Muscat on the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, as well as talks in Rome about Lebanon and Israel for a comprehensive ceasefire agreement, according to the state IRNA news agency. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi and his Italian counterpart Antonio Tajani spoke to each other on phone on Wednesday. A foreign ministry press release said that the two top diplomats said they supported diplomatic efforts to reduce tensions. Meantime, Deputy Foreign Minister for Legal Affairs Kazem Gharibabadi said that Iran and Oman are near to finalizing a deal on new shipping arrangements at the Strait of Hormuz. However, he stressed that the agreement would not lead to an immediate or complete reopening of the strategic waterway connecting the Persian Gulf and the Sea of Oman. He added, the understanding with Oman does not mean implementing Clause 5 of the Islamabad Memorandum of Understanding between Iran and the United States. Also, in another related development, a spokesman for the National Security and Foreign Policy Commission of the Parliament, Hassan Qashqavi, stressed that the situation in the strait will not return to pre-war conditions. The lawmaker was quoted by the Parliament news agency as saying that Iran will not accept the US-imposed sovereign corridor because it fails to ensure Iran's national interests. Amid renewed hopes of de-escalation, Foreign Ministry spokesman Esmail Baghaei said that neither Foreign Minister Araghchi nor Parliament Speaker Mohammad Baqir Ghalibaf are scheduled to visit Pakistan or Qatar for mediated talks with the US. Turaj Shiralilu from Tehran for A News.
After the break, Europe is sweltering under another intense heat wave, with Italy placing all of its major cities on the highest alert and several countries warning of growing health risks, drought and wildfire danger. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back, you're watching Prime Time. Now, much of Europe continues to face extreme heat, with soaring temperatures prompting health warnings, disrupting daily life and increasing the risk of wildfires.
Italy has placed all 27 of its major cities under the country's highest heat alert as a fourth heat wave of the summer intensifies. The nationwide red warning, the first to cover every major city this year, means prolonged high temperatures pose a health risk to everyone, not just vulnerable groups. Residents have been advised to avoid direct sunlight during the hottest hours, remain indoors where possible, and stay hydrated. The extreme conditions have also reached the Vatican, where Pope Leo's first weekly general audience after the July break was moved indoors instead of being held in St. Peter's Square. Pilgrims arrived carrying umbrellas, handheld fans and bottles of water as temperatures continued to soar. The scorching weather is being felt across much of Central Europe. In Poland, Warsaw reached 36 degrees Celsius, around 13 degrees above the seasonal average, with cooling mists offering relief to residents and tourists alike.
There is a lot of humidity in the air, so it makes so terrible the weather with the hot and all these kind of things. We were expecting like a colder weather, and also we have seen that tomorrow you have heavy rains forecasted. So let's see what happens, but really different from expected.
In Czechia, Prague climbed to 33 degrees, prompting charities to distribute water and food to homeless people while encouraging them to seek temporary shelter from the heat. Elsewhere, Hungary has extended its highest nationwide heat warning until Friday, as record low water levels on the Danube forced the country's only nuclear power plant to largely shut down, increasing pressure on the electricity grid. The government has urged households and businesses to cut power use, while non-essential lighting at state buildings is being switched off overnight. The drought has also brought an unusual sight, with millions of mayflies swarming along the Danube during their brief breeding season. Forecasters expect the current spell of extreme heat to peak this week, with several countries warning that temperatures could climb even higher before conditions begin to ease.
Well, let's take a closer look at the River Danube, which is close to its lowest level on record, keeping pressure on energy supplies, shipping and tourism. A weather system moving through Austria could bring some relief, but forecasters say it may not last long. Pablo Gutierrez reports from Budapest.
Here in Budapest, the Danube is just 9 centimeters above its lowest level ever recorded, a sign of how this drought continues to grip Central Europe. The river has shaped life in this region for centuries. Today, it tells a different story. Sandbanks have broken the surface, cargo vessels carry lighter loads, and many river cruises that have changed their routes or canceled departures. The low water has also become an energy problem. Hungary's Paks nuclear power plant depends on the Danube for cooling. Reduced river flow has forced reactors to cut output, leading the government to ask businesses and households to save electricity during peak hours. Decorative lights on public buildings have gone dark as part of those efforts. There is some hope in the forecast. Rain is expected in parts of Austria, where much of the Danube begins its journey into Central Europe. Water managers say any increase in river levels would take time to move downstream into Hungary, and the amount of rain may not be enough to bring a major recovery. The impact now stretches beyond Hungary. In neighboring Romania, authorities have also launched energy-saving measures. Lights have been switched off at landmarks, and the country works to reduce electricity demand during the drought-driven power shortage. Romania has also reduced nuclear power production because of low Danube water levels. For now, this river remains a measure of the crisis facing the region. Until stronger rainfall reaches the Danube basin, governments, businesses, and residents will keep watching the water and hoping for relief. For A News, Pablo Gutierrez, Budapest, Hungary.
Well, joining us now to discuss more on this is sustainability expert Raja Zeb. Thank you for joining us. Now, how worrying are these weather patterns that we're seeing across Europe?
Well, thank you so much for having me. And now the whole world is become a very fertile land for climate change related uncertainties. But the situation right now in the Europe is particularly concerning because it is warming faster than the global average temperature rise. But important thing I want to mention here is the climate change does not create a heat wave from the nothing. Heat wave has always occurred in the European Europe this region, but the climate change does it the load the dice in the favor of more intense, long-lasting, and more frequent heat wave. So right now, what's particularly concerning is that the heat wave and wildfires are now reinforcing each others, and the extreme heat events, some vegetation loss, forest and soils, these kind of uncertainties. And once the condition become the dry enough, so even a small spark can trigger large, you can say that a wildfire. So then the fire themselves will release an additional carbon emissions and damage ecosystem that normally you can say that help to absorb the carbon. So this is why the countries you have recently seen in like the Spain, Portugal, and some other countries like the Greece, Italy, and some other part of the France are repeatedly experiencing this wildfire season. So I believe that at the same time you have already observed that on the many occasions that the northern Europe is increasingly, you can say, that facing that condition that were once mainly associated with the southern Europe. So the important point is that the Europe is not, you can say, simply experiencing some hard conditions or some such type of the heat wave, but the society is beginning to experience a different climate reality. And the recently, I want to mention one more thing here. Like I agree, there is a lot of people are talking about the El Nino effects and a lot of other things as well. I agree that the El Nino add a fuel to the fire, but the climate change is what built the fire in the first place. So El Nino is just definitely El Nino is the contributing factor, but it is not the main cause of what Europe is experiencing nowadays. Not entirely, and El Nino may have the global, you can say that the temperature temporarily or even amplifies. But underlying thing is the long-term climate change. So if the climate change were not occurring, many of these record-breaking temperature would be far less likely in this region. So we need to, be prepared for these kind of uncertainties in the future as well, because I believe that even these, when the emissions, the companies and the businesses are emitting a lot of emissions on the daily basis, but we need to be prepared for these kind of the uncertainties every year in every calendar.
So it's fair to say that climate change will make these droughts more frequent and more severe, and countries need to be prepared for that.
Yeah, definitely. The biggest story is that the extreme heat is no longer just an, you can say that now the environmental issue. It has become a public health issue. It has become the environmental issue. It has become the lifestyle issue. So like the many European, you can say that the traditionally view summer as the comfortable season for the outdoor activities. Like they are going for the outing tourism. They are planning some such kind of the travels. So today you can see that the people are increasingly planning their daily life around the, you can say, the heat waving. For example, if I quote in a few examples over here, like outdoor workers have to adjust the working hours, construction projects are delayed, energy demands are rising every day because the use of the air conditioning, public transport system experiencing, you can say, the disruption, hospital receive and a more, you can say, heat-related patient. So if you can say that because I have like studied somewhere, then the scientists call that like if temperature remain above 20 degrees centigrade overnight. So the scientists call it a tropical night. A tropical night means the human body does not recover properly from the daytime, eat proper sleep, people sleep poorly, the productivity decreases, and health-related issues are usually increases, especially for the people, elderly people, and those who are facing some kind of the health-related uncertainties. We are also seeing this behavioral changes when these heat waves, you can say, they stay for the long time period, and that the government has also released some, you can say, the precautions and SOPs related to the heat warming. Schools are reviewing their schedule, and government are issuing the heat wave and heat alerts for many families, especially vulnerable communities. Summer is increasingly become a period of the risk rather than the recreation. So right now, this will be, you can say, that the very intense heat wave right now is going on in the whole Europe and the countries specifically I have mentioned over here.
So what about the economic consequences of this if we're to see these dry conditions continue into the autumn? It could affect things from shipping to power generation. What might we see in the coming months from an economic perspective?
Yeah, yes, definitely. It will create a lot of uncertainties towards the energy, because when the heat wave starts, the millions of the people use the air conditioning to combat this kind of the heat wave, and when they use the millions of the people use the air conditioning and other the cooling system, then definitely it will increase the pressure on the electricity grid. And also when the heat wave actually appears, it you can say that the reduce the efficiency of the energy as well. So it will create a huge burden on that, but it is also an opportunity. So what kind of opportunity? Opportunity is to transition towards the clean energy, and the businesses that have been set up for the long time, they are actually advocating for the, you can say that, like for the renewable energy. So we need to, right now it's a best time. It's a right time to divert our attention towards the clean energy practices, not specifically in the Europe, but I must quote here for the whole world to to reduce the emissions because once the emission ratio will be increases on the daily basis, it will be increases on, you can say, the monthly basis, yearly basis. Then we need to be prepared for such kind of the uncertainties. So the important thing is in behind, you can say, between, you can say, that the mitigation and adaptation strategy, we need some kind of, you can say, that the policy related things to towards these kind of the towards these kind of the issues or challenges we are facing nowadays.
And what should households and businesses be doing now to build resilience against this and build resilience against future droughts?
Businesses are trying, but like I quote in one example here, because I know there are a lot of countries in the Asian region and some kind of, you can say, that the South Asian region, where the government don't have any specific policies toward this kind of the transition. They have specific limit. They set specific limit for this. You can say that, like the commercial and the residential, and for the industries as well. You cannot go behind to that limit. So some part is still remaining. The lot of companies in this region, some European region, Asian region, MENA region, they are actually preparing, and they have completely divert attention toward this. But the governments actually, I mainly see, and the many occasion I have seen that, like, they have some kind of the limitation, some taxation processes, and some tariff or something like that, which is actually restricting this kind of the transition towards the clean energy. So businesses need to be very, you can say that, accurate. They need to prepare a very smooth, you can say, way for the transition towards the clean energy. Then we will combat on these challenges. Otherwise, these challenges will increase on the daily basis, and you can say that we need to be prepared for the huge losses, not only for, like, you can say that, the lifestyle, but the economic losses, healthcare, and lot of other issues as well. Because, like, for example, if there is a lot of people in the youth in all these regions, they are advocating these kind of the energy transitions, for the climate change, for, you can say, the lot of other things. Because if these uncertainties remain for like 5 to 10 years, for, you can say that, for 2030, then it would create a lot of issues toward the, like, you can say, the employment uncertainties, there is a life uncertainties, economic uncertainties. So we need, it's a right time. I already mentioned, and now I am again I am mentioning here, like, that we need to, it's a right time to divert your attention towards the clean energy transition. There is no other, you can say that, like, way available to combat on these challenges.
And how worried are you that we could potentially see this issue get worse year by year?
Yes, definitely. But these kind of the scenarios you have recently faced, like for example, in the Europe, we have the heat wave. You can say the South Asia, we have the globes. There are the intense rainfall in the South Asia, but the European region, when you compare this European with the Europe, there is no proper rainfall. Weather patterns are completely changed. So this create not only issue related to the climate change. I already mentioned that this is not just longer a climate or environmental issue. It's become a public health issue, economic issue, even the lifestyle issue. So it will create a lot of uncertainties towards this, and the future will be very devastating if we are not preparing for, or we are not planning the mitigation and adaptation strategies. We need to actually the mutual cooperation from micro level to macro level. We need a proper policy framework, a policy implementation strategy from micro level, from civil society to the government, from public to private sector partnerships. So after that, we can combat these challenges. Otherwise, these challenges will stay longer, and the uncertainties remains in front of us.
Very concerning, isn't it? Thank you very much for joining us on the programme and providing your insights.
Thank you so much for your time to listen to me. Thank you.
After the break, we'll check in with our correspondents from around the globe, so do stay with us. Welcome back, you're watching Prime Time. Washington and London have discussed the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz with the UK's new Foreign Secretary, Ed Miliband. He called it essential on his first official trip to Washington. Nick Harper reports.
The US and UK's top diplomats grappled with weighty issues. Marco Rubio and Ed Miliband have met before, but this was the first time with Miliband in the Foreign Secretary role. This is also his first overseas trip in that new position, after he was appointed to the cabinet role by the new UK Labour Prime Minister Andy Burnham. Iran, Gaza, Ukraine, all topics on the discussion list. On Iran, Miliband said that reopening the Strait of Hormuz is essential to bring down global energy costs. On Ukraine, under President Donald Trump, the US has wavered in its support of Kyiv. The UK's position is that support for Ukraine is vital to help uphold security for both Europe and the United States. But as well as dealing with those issues, Miliband had to mend difficult personal relations with the US, undertaking something of a diplomatic repair job following criticism he made of Trump as far back as 2016. He was reminded of that criticism while in Washington. When the two men briefly appeared before the media, one reporter asked if Miliband would apologise for his previous comments in which he called President Trump an idiot, a racist and a misogynist. Miliband and Rubio ignored the question, while the UK Foreign Secretary instead said that they were looking forward to their meeting. The White House, though, had reportedly signalled its concern about Miliband's appointment, considering his previous criticism of the US leader. Miliband, in his previous role as UK Energy Secretary, was a proponent of climate change initiatives, including building more wind farms. But that's something that Donald Trump is vehemently against, this week saying any country with a windmill is a loser. Nick Harper for A News in Washington, D.C.
Well, as autumn approaches, Ukraine is calling on allies to bolster its air defences. Kyiv says critical Western supplies which are needed to protect the national energy grid are facing severe delays. William Denslow reports from Brussels.
According to Ukrainian officials, Kyiv was targeted by Russian attacks on average every 3 days last month, and the country's President Volodymyr Zelensky has issued a stark warning that Russia is bolstering its missile production ahead of a likely winter campaign to again target Ukraine's energy infrastructure. That is why he says that urgent action is needed from Kyiv's allies, especially amidst this warning from Ukraine that the supply of air defense missiles to counter the threat from ballistic missiles from allies is down by a third in the first half of 2026 compared to last year. In particular, Ukraine needs Patriot defense systems. Now, these are the ones that Ukraine says are best equipped to help counter Russian strikes. However, they are a precious commodity and particularly under strain, considering they are also being used as part of the US-Israel conflict with Iran. Now, assistance is on the way. Here in Europe, a production facility for Patriots is in production in Germany. The European Union also saying that it has this loan of over $100 billion for Ukraine, and it's in constant contact with Kyiv to ensure that it gets the supplies as part of this tranche of cash it needs to help protect itself in any way it sees fit. Also, the United States, crucially, at the Ankara NATO summit in July, President Trump said that Ukraine could have the right to be able to make its own Patriot missiles going forward. He has seemingly, though, walked that back, saying that no final decision has been made. If it is made, it would be a huge boon for Kyiv, and with these supplies from Europe as well, very welcome news indeed. But all of these pledges could indeed take months to fully come to fruition. What Kyiv is saying is that urgent action is needed now to help it protect its skies. William Denslow, Frey News, Brussels.
Turkey and Syria is seeking to deepen bilateral ties. Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan met his Syrian counterpart in Ankara today for talks covering a range of regional issues. Adam Morrow reports from Istanbul.
Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan has held talks in Ankara with his Syrian counterpart, Asad Hassan el-Shaibani, as the two countries continue efforts to strengthen ties after last year's political transition in Damascus. According to Turkish officials, the two ministers discussed bilateral ties, regional security, developments in Syria, cooperation in the counterterrorism field, and efforts to stabilize the country. Talks also focused on Syria's territorial integrity, post-conflict reconstruction, humanitarian assistance, and the country's gradual reintegration into the regional and international community. The two top diplomats also exchanged views on recent developments across the Middle East and discussed possible steps to deepen cooperation between Ankara and Damascus. Security, however, remains at the heart of the relationship. Turkey insists on the full integration of armed groups into Syria's state institutions, saying Kurdish-led militant groups like the YPG should not maintain autonomous armed formations in northern Syria. Ankara regards the YPG as an extension of the outlawed PKK, which has long been viewed as a terrorist group by Turkey, the United States, and the European Union. The meeting comes as Turkey continues to support Syria's new government, both politically and economically, following the collapse of the government of Bashar al-Assad more than a year ago. After years of backing Syria's armed opposition during a devastating civil war, Ankara has repeatedly rebuilt official ties with the new leadership in Damascus. Turkish officials have repeatedly said that a stable and unified Syria is essential, both for regional security and for the voluntary return of millions of Syrian refugees still living in Turkey. Thursday's meeting underscores Ankara's role as one of Syria's key regional partners as the country seeks to restore stability after more than a decade of conflict. This is Adam Morrow for A News in Istanbul, Turkey.
Meanwhile, Afghanistan is seeking to strengthen its economic ties with neighbouring Turkmenistan through a new round of high-level business talks. An Afghan trade delegation is in Ashgabat, where discussions have focused on boosting commerce, investment and cross-border cooperation. Our correspondent Min Bahis has the details from Kabul.
Turkmenistan is one of Afghanistan's key regional trading partners because of their shared border. It's also an important route for imports and exports. An economic delegation from Afghanistan's Chamber of Commerce and Investment has traveled to Ashgabat at the official invitation of Turkmenistan's Chamber of Commerce and Industry. It says the visit is aimed at expanding economic cooperation between the two neighboring countries. Talks will focus on increasing trade and transit, strengthen cooperation in the oil and gas sector, promote joint investment, improve border infrastructure and remove barriers that affect cross-border commerce. Afghanistan's acting ambassador in Turkmenistan, Fazl Muhammad Sabir, met with members of the business delegation to discuss opportunities for expanding trade relations as well as the challenges facing Afghan traders. According to the Afghan embassy in Ashgabat, Sabir reaffirmed the embassy's commitment to supporting Afghan businesses and facilitating trade. Meanwhile, around 100 Turkmen traders and investors have been invited to Afghanistan. The latest visit underscores ongoing efforts by both countries to deepen economic engagement and improve regional connectivity through stronger commercial partnerships. Tamim Bahis in Kabul, iNews.
There's been more power disruption in Georgia, which has suffered its third nationwide blackout in 2 weeks. Officials blame problems with the testing schedule, but opposition figures say sabotage remains a possibility. Nini Nikolaishvili has the details from Tbilisi.
2 weeks ago, Georgia went completely dark, twice back to back. A sabotage case was opened. An investigation was launched with officials saying it was technical issues. Now, for a third time, the entire country blacked out for about an hour. Power and water came back on everywhere yesterday, but a lot of people are wanting to know why it is happening. Georgia's energy regulator, GNERC, says engineers were running scheduled tests at the Angry hydropower plant, which meant briefly operating the grid at a non-standard frequency. They said that move had tripped the whole system. However, Angry HPP only covers about 70% of Georgia's electricity, and the blackout affected the whole country. Opposition leader Ada Davitaya says the silence is telling. After 3 blackouts, an open sabotage case, and 2 weeks of unanswered questions, opposition figures and analysts say that they are not accepting the technical explanation at face value. Analyst Gia Khukhashvili argues that a large part of Georgia's energy system, from transmission lines to distribution companies, is effectively under Russian control, singling out Telesi and Telmiko as examples. He believes that Angry HPP itself is under indirect Russian influence and that the outage may have originated from a deliberate lockdown, potentially triggered from inside Abkhazia. Khukhashvili says this is not random technical failure. He believes it's a message: stay quiet and don't move towards Europe. Officials, meanwhile, still are not offering a final answer. Nini Nikolaishvili, Tbilisi, iNews.
Well, the economic fallout from the war in Ukraine continues to be felt in Central Asia. Uzbek exporters say repeated drone attacks on Wildberries warehouses in Russia are disrupting the cross-border delivery of goods. Seva Rajapova reports from Tashkent.
Uzbek exporters say repeated drone attacks on Wildberries warehouses and distribution centers in Russia are disrupting deliveries and affecting cross-border trade. Speaking during an open dialogue with the government, several businesses raised concerns over declining exports and delayed shipments. Among them was textile manufacturer Artatex, which employs 300 people and typically exports around $3 million worth of products each year. Deputy Prime Minister Jamshid Khojayev said the government will hold a separate meeting with Wildberries management on Friday. Officials will also review exporters' concerns over outstanding payments and prepare what they described as a long-term solution. According to Reuters, Ukrainian drone strikes have hit at least 20 Wildberries warehouses across Russia since the 18th of July, damaging logistics infrastructure and disrupting operations. The issue is significant for Uzbekistan's exporters. Wildberries says sales of Uzbek-made products on its platform exceeded $1.4 billion in 2025, up from $605 million in 2024 and $418 million in 2023, highlighting the marketplace's growing role as a key export channel for Uzbek businesses. Civil Rajab reporting from Tashkent, Uzbekistan, iNews.
After the break, we'll take a look at the other top stories making the headlines today around the world. Stay with us. Welcome back, you're watching Prime Time. Israel has renewed strikes in southern Lebanon, saying it's taken action after ceasefire violations by Hezbollah. Lebanese authorities report 1 person killed and a dozen wounded.
Ongoing diplomatic efforts between Israel and Lebanon gave way to renewed military action on Wednesday after Israel launched targeted strikes in southern Lebanon. Tel Aviv says they were in response to what it described as a Hezbollah violation. Authorities confirm 2 Israeli soldiers were killed. The Lebanese Health Ministry says 1 person died and 12 others wounded in the attack in the southern town of Tibnin. Before the operation, the Israeli military issued its first online evacuation warning in more than a month, telling residents of the village of Mansouri, about 25 kilometers from Tibnin, to leave. It said it would act against the Iran-backed group in the area. Video from social media showed plumes of smoke rising over Mansouri after the strikes. Reuters verified the location using satellite imagery and topographical features, while NASA detected thermal activity in the area on the day of the operation. The strikes came a day after the latest round of US-facilitated talks in Rome, where technical delegations from Israel and Lebanon resumed discussions aimed at advancing security arrangements along their border. The United Nations says the evacuation order for Mansouri is the first displacement order issued by the Israeli military since the latest ceasefire announcement on the 19th of June.
This new order comes as displaced families have been cautiously making their way back to their homes in southern Lebanon in recent weeks, underscoring how fragile the situation remains and the uncertainty that people continue to face. Hostilities continue to affect civilians in southern Lebanon.
According to the United Nations, around 1,500 people were living in the village at the end of July. It says families who had only recently begun returning home now face renewed uncertainty as shelling, demolition operations and other military activity continue to damage homes, farmland and civilian infrastructure.
European policymakers are focusing on preventing a repeat of last week's mass crossing into Ceuta. Examinations are underway into what caused the crisis. Here's more.
One border, thousands of crossings, a political storm across Europe. Ceuta is a small Spanish exclave on Morocco's Mediterranean coast. Home to around 85,000 people, it received almost that same number of arrivals in just a few days. Its location has turned this tiny territory into one of the European Union's most strategically important frontiers. In late July, around 72,000 people entered Ceuta from Morocco, the territory's largest mass crossing since 2021. Many swam around Tarajal Beach, while others climbed the border barriers, overwhelming reception facilities and security forces. The crossing also claimed lives. Ceuta, along with neighboring Melilla, is Spain's gateway into North Africa. As Spanish territory, both cities form the European Union's only land frontier with the African continent. Their status remains contested. Morocco says it's their territory. Spain says they have belonged to Spain for centuries, are not recognized by the United Nations as occupied territories.
To describe what happened yesterday as an attack, a violation of Spain's territorial integrity. Ceuta is a Spanish city, and what happened yesterday deserves our strongest reproach and our firmest condemnation.
No single factor explains the sudden influx. Spanish officials point first to a Supreme Court ruling issued in June. Under that decision, people arriving by sea cannot be returned immediately. Instead, every case must undergo an individual legal assessment. But authorities say trafficking networks falsely presented the ruling as proof that anyone reaching Ceuta would be allowed to stay. Attention has also focused on Morocco's role. Some analysts argue a movement of this scale would have been difficult without the knowledge of Moroccan security forces. Even so, Madrid has not formally accused Rabat of deliberately facilitating the crossings and says there's no public evidence. Economic realities also played a significant role. Many people were driven by unemployment, low incomes, and the hope of better opportunities in Europe, while rumors on social media suggested the route had become easier. The Spanish government responded by deploying additional national police and civil guard officers, reinforcing the border with military personnel, expanding reception centers, strengthening operational coordination with Morocco. A request from Ceuta to declare a national state of emergency was rejected, with Madrid saying the legal threshold had not been met. Moroccan authorities say they are continuing to cooperate with Spain, while blaming human trafficking networks for exploiting vulnerable migrants. Those without legal grounds to remain are expected to be returned. But before that can happen, each person must be identified and individually assessed. Asylum claims will be examined separately, while unaccompanied minors remain protected under Spanish law. Spain and Morocco have also agreed to accelerate return procedures, although legal reviews mean the process is likely to take time. The events have reopened long-standing disagreements over how the bloc should manage its external borders. Italy accused Spain of failing to contain the influx. Rome has even suggested Spain's Schengen membership, allowing the free movement of people between certain countries, could be reconsidered. Finland backed that position. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen instead called for faster returns. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz expressed support for Spain, saying effective protection of the EU's external borders is essential to reducing irregular migration. Madrid rejected Italy's criticism, arguing that unilateral measures cannot solve what it describes as a shared European challenge.
Over in Armenia, a historic power struggle is moving to the courtroom. On Friday, the supreme head of the Armenian Apostolic Church will stand trial on criminal charges. The unprecedented case pits the religious institution against the government.
Catholicos Garagan II and 6 senior clerics are heading to a regional court. They face criminal charges for allegedly obstructing a secular judicial ruling. Defense lawyers strongly condemned the trial, arguing that state intervention violates the constitutional autonomy of the church. The dispute stems from the case of a defrocked bishop, Gevorg Saroyan. The church stripped him of his status for violating his vows. However, Saroyan, who publicly supports Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan's policies, sued the church for reinstatement and won in a state court. The church's refusal to comply triggered the current prosecution. Independent analysts suggest the government increasingly views the church as a political threat capable of mobilizing opposition forces. The apostolic leadership is not just a critic. Catholicos Garagan himself has directly called for the Prime Minister to step down over territorial concessions. With the trial taking place in Vakashapat, the historic spiritual heart of the church, and another prominent cleric currently under house arrest, the courtroom has become the latest battleground in a deeply polarized nation.
And finally this evening, South Korea's record-breaking heatwave is forcing people to find creative ways to stay cool. As heat warnings expand to more parts of the country, one former gold mine has become an unlikely refuge from the scorching temperatures.
Deep underground, Gwangmyeong Cave has become a cool refuge as South Korea endures a record-breaking heat wave. The former gold mine, just south of Seoul, maintains cool temperatures throughout the year, offering visitors respite from the extreme summer heat. As temperatures soar above ground, people have been flocking to the popular tourist attraction in search of relief. Among them was 78-year-old Ha Young-jin.
It feels great. It's like stepping into a refrigerator. With global warming and the climate changing like this, I think it's only going to get harder if temperatures keep rising. We humans have to find some way to deal with it. After all, this is a climate that we humans have damaged.
Temperatures reached 42.5 degrees Celsius in Yangsan in the southeast of the country on Sunday, the highest recorded in South Korea since observations began in 1904. The city registered high temperatures above 40 degrees for 5 consecutive days. the Korea Meteorological Administration issued its first ever warning for parts of Seoul and neighboring Gyeonggi before extending it to the Chungcheong region. South Korea's president has called the heatwave a national disaster and urged authorities to step up support for those affected after scorching conditions were blamed for 19 deaths.
That's all we've got time for tonight on Prime Time. From all of us here in the studio, thank you very much for watching and have a safe and restful evening. Good night.